The man accused of starting the fire that burned into Spokane is due in court today. 37-year-old Aaron Farinacci was arrested last night and charged with first-degree arson in connection with the Old Trails fire. He is being held on $1 million bail. His first court appearance is scheduled for today. The Spokane County Sheriff's Office says a witness saw a man crouched in the grass near Old Trails Road and Euclid Road Saturday morning. Minutes later, the witness saw smoke rising. Investigators questioned a man matching that description the same day and released him. Detectives later developed probable cause and arrested him at his home last night with a search warrant in hand. Farinacci has a prior conviction. In 2012, he pleaded guilty to a criminal charge in Arizona connected to the tragic loss of his father. He is 37 and lives in Spokane. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson spoke to CNN about the arrest. He said it adds to what was already a tragic situation. It makes it harder to accept that some of this damage may have been caused on purpose. The cause of the other two fires in the Spokane complex, Autumn Lane and Fairview, is still under investigation. That inquiry is separate from the arson case. First-degree arson is the most serious version of the charge under Washington law. It applies when a fire is set knowingly and puts people or occupied buildings at risk. That is exactly the setting where Old Trails began. The arrest does not change anything about the fire itself. It is still burning, still uncontained, and still someone else's job to put out, regardless of how it started. While the investigation moved forward overnight, the fires themselves kept growing. The three Spokane fires now cover just over 10,000 acres combined. Autumn Lane did most of that growth, adding 2,250 acres in one day. None of the three has any containment. The federal damage count has not moved since yesterday. It still lists 550 structures lost on Old Trails, 80 on Autumn Lane, 30 on Fairview. That adds up to 660. Local officials have been saying a higher number for 2 days now, over 700. More is expected as assessors work through roughly 1,100 additional properties using satellite imagery. The gap between the two counts is not a contradiction. It is the difference between a federal tally that updates on its own schedule and a county walking every block by hand. 65,000 people remain evacuated. No deaths have been confirmed. The Washington National Guard remains active in the Spokane area. This is the first time it has been called up for a wildfire in this state since 2021. Soldiers are helping with traffic control, security in evacuated neighborhoods, and logistics for the shelters. Level 3 evacuation orders, meaning leave now, are still in effect for the neighborhoods closest to all three fires. Level 2 orders cover a wider ring around them. Level 3 has a specific meaning that is worth repeating because it has not changed in 3 days of coverage. It does not mean pack a bag. It means leave immediately because officials cannot promise there will be time for a second warning. Air quality across the Spokane area remains in the unhealthy range for anyone with asthma or heart or lung conditions. Keep windows closed and run indoor air on recirculate rather than pulling in outside air. Check the air quality map for your specific address rather than assuming the whole region reads the same. Anyone unsure which zone they are in should check the county's own evacuation map rather than guess. The boundaries have shifted more than once this week. The Spokane County Sheriff's Office issued a separate warning this week. Anyone caught flying a drone near the fire zone can be fined or arrested. A single drone in that airspace can ground every aircraft working the fire. If you have someone out on that fire line or a home in one of these neighborhoods, we would like to hear from you. Subscribing helps more of the people asking these same questions find this channel. The fire that moved the most yesterday was not in Spokane. It was 200 miles north. The Sinlahekin Fire, west of Tonasket, added 29,140 acres in a single day. It now stands at 102,934 acres. Containment is 5%. That is close to the same daily growth as the largest fire in the country. It happened on a fire most of the nation has not heard of. Sinlahekin started weeks ago and spent most of that time as a background story, growing steadily but never making national news. Yesterday, it grew faster than Spokane's three fires have grown in total since Saturday. The Little Giant Fire, northwest of Leavenworth, nearly doubled overnight. It added 20,816 acres and now covers 59,346 acres with no containment. Together, those two fires alone added roughly 50,000 acres in one day, more than the entire Spokane complex has burned since it started. There is better news elsewhere in the state. The Kaiser Canyon fire south of Nespelem climbed to 44% contained, up from 38%. It remains the fire with the heaviest structure loss in the region before this weekend, at 44 buildings. Kaiser Canyon has been burning since mid-July. 3 weeks of steady work on that perimeter is starting to show. Two much younger fires nearby still grew faster than anything else in the country yesterday. The Maudrite fire is at 51,000 acres and 16% contained. The Miter Rock fire near Davenport more than doubled to 3,800 acres, with 5 structures lost. Bradeen Hill and Hudspeth both grew modestly and remain uncontained. That new fire inside the Spokane Fire District has a name. It is called South Connell. Crews had it fully contained by the time the report went out, a small win most people never heard about in a hard week. Further north, the Ptarmigan fire near Mazama grew to nearly 16,000 acres with no containment. Border 2, deep in the North Cascades, added 1,000 acres and also remains at 0. Oregon's numbers moved in the opposite direction from Washington's. Growth continued, but so did control. The Big Grass Fire remains the largest active wildfire in the country. It added 5,573 acres and now stands at 342,352 acres. Containment climbed to 25%, up from 19%. The Coleman Creek Fire east of Juntura is still burning through open grass and brush. It grew to 274,635 acres. Containment rose to 23%. Between Big Grass and Coleman Creek alone, southeastern Oregon is now home to more than 617,000 acres of active fire. That is larger than the state of Rhode Island, burning in 2 incidents in one corner of one state. The Roe Creek complex south of Fossil is now 60% contained, up from 53%. It remains the largest firefighting operation in either state. The Grasshopper Fire in the Mount Hood National Forest finally has containment. 17% after sitting at 0 for more than 2 weeks. The Shingle Fire southeast of Mitchell more than doubled its containment to 33%. The Fox Fire near Huntington is at 46%. The Hagen Fire east of Pendleton is at 11%. The Castle Fire northeast of Tiller reached 30%. The Bald Mountain Fire southeast of Burns is at 30%. The Ego Fire near Enterprise is at 10%. The Akawa Butte Fire near Sisters is holding steady at 85%, essentially finished. A small fire east of Grants Pass, right beside Interstate 5, is now 8% contained after sitting at 0. It never grew past 100 acres, but it pulled more than 400 people onto a single 100-acre fire because of what sits next to it. The gap between the federal structure count and the county's own number is worth explaining, because it will keep coming up. 660 against 700 plus, and both are being reported as fact by people who are not lying to anyone. The National Interagency Fire Center gets its numbers from incident management teams working each fire. Those numbers are verified before they are entered into the national system. That process is careful, and it is slow by design. Spokane County's own estimate comes from local assessors walking neighborhoods and from satellite comparisons run block by block. It moves faster because the county answers to residents who need an answer now, not to a national database. Neither number is wrong. They are measuring the same disaster on 2 different clocks. The same thing happened after the Gray Fire and the Oregon Road Fire burned through part of this same county 3 years ago. The early federal count there also lagged the county's own tally for the better part of a week before the two lined up. Expect the same pattern here. The federal count should keep climbing toward the county's number over the next few days, not the other way around. If it ever moves in reverse, that is the number worth questioning. The weather today explains why Oregon is gaining ground while parts of Washington are not. Forecasters are watching what they call a thermal trough building over southwest Oregon, stretching north along the Cascades to the Columbia River Gorge. That pattern brings hot, dry, unstable air, and it is a new high-risk zone to watch over the next few days. Humidity across California, the inland Northwest, and the Great Basin is running between 3 and 15%. In northern Idaho and Montana, it is a little higher, 10 to 20%. The same pattern hit fires further south hard yesterday. The Widemouth Fire in Utah added nearly 32,000 acres in a day. The Tartar Fire in Idaho added over 10,000. Neither of those fires is one we normally cover here. We are naming them today because the same dry pattern grew Sinlahekin by 29,000 acres. It did the same thing 400 miles away on the same afternoon. There is a small piece of good news for part of the country. Southeast Arizona and southwest New Mexico have a real chance of wet thunderstorms this week. That is the kind of storm that slows a fire down instead of starting a new one. Temperatures are actually running close to normal or slightly cooler across the northern plains and northern Rockies right now. It is the humidity, not the heat, doing the damage in most of our region today. That is worth sitting with for a second. A day can feel mild and still be dangerous for fire. What matters most is moisture in the air and in the fuel, not what the thermometer reads on the porch. Southwest Oregon and the Columbia Gorge are the places to watch closest over the next few days. That is new ground for this pattern, and it sits close to several of the fires we have been tracking all week. None of the large fires currently burning sit directly inside that new risk zone. New starts do not ask permission. A single spark there would face the same wind corridor that has driven every major run we have covered this month. For anyone new to this coverage, here is what the numbers do not always capture. Behind every acreage figure is a household deciding whether tonight is the night they leave. Level 3 orders came down street by street in Spokane this week, sometimes with an hour of notice or less. The Red Cross shelter at the Spokane Convention Center is still open and still taking people. The county fairgrounds is still holding livestock and horses for families who evacuated with animals and nowhere else to put them. Both have been running for 3 straight days now. That is longer than most shelter operations last. It says something about how slowly this disaster is resolving, compared with a fire that burns through and moves on in a single afternoon. If you are further from the fire and want to help, the advice has not changed. Send money to an established relief fund rather than boxes of donated goods. A truck full of supplies takes up the same road a fire engine needs. If you are simply exhausted from watching this unfold on a screen somewhere else, that is a normal response. You do not have to live near a fire for a week of fire news to wear you down. Here is where the country stands tonight. 99 large fires are burning without containment, down from 102 yesterday. 4 new large fires were reported overnight, down from 7. Total personnel assigned actually dropped by nearly 1,800 people, even as the acres under management grew. Since the 1st of January, the country has burned 5,253,000 acres. That is 138% of the 10-year average. The number of fires nationally is running at 128% of average. This year is not just about a few enormous fires. It is a season with more fires overall, several of which happen to grow very large. 3 things to watch tomorrow. Whether Farinacci's court appearance brings any new detail about how the fire actually started. Whether Sinlahekin adds another 30,000 acres, or whether today's calmer weather in the inland northwest finally gives crews a break there too. And whether the federal structure count in Spokane starts closing the gap with the county's number. And whether Oregon holds its momentum. 4 fires gained containment today, none lost ground on percentage, and that has not been true on a single day so far this season. Thank you for spending this time with the people working these lines tonight on both sides of the investigation and the fire itself. New numbers again tomorrow morning. We will go through them together. Take care of each other out there.